I got the leather cut, and before we start working on it, let me show you something real quick. The fellow that I'm making it for, he sent me a pretty much detailed description plus a diagram of what he wanted. And I think that's really cool. He said, you know, which side it's going to be on, and put a little drawing of how the magazines are going to sit in there, and that end's going to go toward his butt. That end's going to go toward his navel. He's going to wear it on the right side because he's left-handed. Anyway, that takes the guesswork out of it, and I like that. Because a lot of times, when I'm making something, I got to do a mock-up, send a picture, they'll make a suggestion, can you change this, this, and this? Then I got to redo it, sometimes completely, sometimes just modify the mock-up, and then get started. But this one, pretty much sure what he wanted. I did send a picture of the mock-up anyway, just to be sure before I started cutting leather. So where we're at now is we have the leather cut. I got the 7 ounce for the front, the 9 ounce for the back, and they're going to fit together back to back like that with the magazines going down the middle. I took and I used an ink pen, which I have no idea where it is. There it is. I used an ink pen, and my pattern, oh boy, is way up under here. There we go. I cut that up where the magazine pouches are going to go, laid it over top, outlined around that, did that to both sides. Well, on the inside I scribed it in because I'm going to need those scribe lines when I glue it together. Did the same thing with the back piece, and on the front one I also scribed it in on the front because that'll show me where to punch my stitch lines once I get the die on it and get it glued together. But right now we're going to bevel the edges where the magazine pouches are going to go. Now I want to bevel just where the magazine pouches are and not beyond them. On the front, it doesn't matter so much if I go over, because this whole thing is going to be sanded and beveled by the time I'm done. A good sharp beveler always works better. Yeah, no kidding. And I'm going to do that with both these pieces. I didn't scribe this one because this is the back piece, and it's really not necessary to scribe it. Just drawing it on there will that's sufficient. But I'm going to keep doing this. Actually, I can just go ahead and finish this right now. Just bevel that. Oops. Bevel that. Bevel that. I almost went over on that one. And that'll do that for now. Next step is to get some dye on these things. Alright, let's get some dye on this thing. I got my black dye. Now I buy this stuff by the quart, then I transfer it into these little bottles. Makes it easier to handle and easier to hold. I like to shake it up.
Shake it up, baby, now. Shake it up, baby.
I knew she was going to do that. She's so entertaining. So, putting black dye on a piece of leather. Basically, I soak the dauber and just put it on. Everywhere. And you can see where the scribed lines are. They're shown through the black dye. And that was the idea. Basically, all I do is just try to keep it off my fingers. Doesn't always work that way. And I just soak it with the black dye until I think this side has had enough black dye added to it. It's not really necessary because way down at the bottom and where it's going to be glued together, you can't see that from the outside anyway. But I don't know. I just have to make sure it gets dyed everywhere. I guess I'm kind of anal about that. What they call it, OCD. So anyway, after the backside's dyed, just flip it over and dye the outside of it. With black dye, I like to use a lot of dye. Just saturate the leather with it to the point where the dye is actually puddling on top of the leather. Then I know it's got as much dye as it can take, as much dye as it'll absorb. Basically, I just keep putting dye on it until it's pretty much stops absorbing it. Reason for that is if you don't use enough dye, and it absorbs in further or soaks in further, the natural color of the leather can show through. In some cases, it's kind of a cool look, kind of rustic looking. Gives it a look of like a little bit of a look of age, you know, like it's been used for something. So anyway, I think y'all get the idea. I'm going to go ahead and dye this, and looks like that's pretty much all it's going to need. Get the edges of it too. Now, actually, I don't need to worry about the edge all the way around here, across the bottom, and over here, because I'm going to sand that, and it's going to need to be re-dyed anyway. So mostly across top here. I'm going to do one more on here, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other piece, leave them to dry, probably a day or two, and when we come back, we'll go ahead and glue these guys together. And we'll see you then.